Hi, it's Shaw from Central Nervous Systems, and today we're going to do the next video in our series for landed costs. And in this one, I'm going to be applying a landed cost document to a receipt for some freight. So we've in the previous video we've talked about what landed costs are and the setups to allow that to work in Acumatica. So in this one, I'm just going to go and apply landed cost. So I'm in my purchase workspace, and so within that workspace, I have two options. I can go into transactions and click on the landed costs, but I also have a nice little tile that I've set up for myself to go into create a new landed cost. So that's what I'm going to use. Great. So now in my entry screen for landed costs, so I'm going to start off on the left-hand side. The date that I'm going to use generally is going to be the date that I'm applying this, and in most cases it will be today's date that I'm doing this for. I'm going to go and then select a vendor, and so I have three vendors here. As discussed in the previous video, in order to get a vendor to show up in the landed costs application screen, it needs to be selected as a landed cost vendor. So these are the ones that I have in my system, and today I'm going to be applying a freight charge, and it's going to be just a land freight. So I'm just going to pick the transit transport as my vendor. The vendor reference here, I'm going to put in some sort of reference to what this landed cost applies to. So it would be either freight BL or something like that that relates to the receipt of the goods. Remembering the landed cost is the freight portion that is separate from what we were buying the goods from and who we were buying the goods from. So in this case, I'm going to put a bill of lading number that I've got in there. Okay. Next step here is to apply the actual cost. And so I'm going to come into the landed cost tab, click on the plus. Now I've got multiple branches in my test company here, and so you may or may not have this in your setup. I'm going to go straight to my landed cost code, and these are the three codes that are set up for me, and I'm going to select the transport. Notice that it has the allocation method grayed out, and in this case this has been set up by cost. So whatever the total cost is here for my freight is going to be allocated across potentially multiple line items, and it's going to be done by an amount, by the cost, rather than a quantity, or there are various other setups that you can do for landed cost. So I'm going to put a $100 charge. I'm not going to worry about tax, but if there was tax, would take care of tax as well. Next, once I've got this, I'm going to go into the document details, because now I got to apply this to an actual receipt. So a PO receipt that I've received already into the system, so the goods are in the system, and I want to apply the landed cost to it. So I'm going to go and click on the PO receipt. You could do the PO receipt by line, but generally if I'm going to get a freight charge and I've got 2 or 3 items, the freight charge is going to apply to all those items. And so generally this is, I'd want to pick the PO receipt. So once I do that, I'm going to go and find whether it be by vendor, so that this is the vendor of who I purchased the item for, or if I've got a receipt number and receiving has forwarded me the information, I can then look that up. So for me, it's this one right here. Notice that I've got the same BL number, so it's useful that way. So I'm going to click on Add and Close, because that's the one that I want to apply. So in this case, I have one line, and so the $100 is going to apply to this receipt for this one item. Now, notice when I did that, the allocated amount here is 0. So that will remain 0 until I actually press the save button, and now the $100 gets allocated to this one line. Okay, so I've now applied it to the receipt. Now, depending on the workflow for your landed costs, you may or may not be able to take this off hold and may need further approvals. In my case, I don't, so I'm going to take it off hold. It's now ready to be released, and I'm going to go and click on release. Wonderful. So now that I've done this, I've got my landed cost applied to these goods, and so now an extra $100 is applied to the cost of it, prorated across 20 units. So that extra cost is going to be prorated across my 20 units that I've received. Now, if I only have, if I have less than 20 left in inventory, then the prorated amount will go against those amounts that are left, and the remainder for the inventory that's no longer there. It may have been used up right away, and we didn't get to this fast enough. The remainder will be expensed through the landed cost expense item GL code in Acumatica. So I'm now done with applying my landed cost. So really easy to do, and hope you enjoy this video on applying landed costs.